In this video, I want to talk about my timecode workflow and why I choose to use timecode when filming a talking head YouTube video like this. Before jumping into the details of my workflow, I want to give you a quick overview of what is timecode. In a nutshell, timecode is a means to synchronize audio and video clips together. Timecode is represented in the following format of numbers, which from left to right denote the hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. And practically speaking, using timecode doesn't affect my video quality at all, other than allowing me to easily synchronize separate audio and video clips together. So it's really more of a quality of life feature that makes my life in the post-production or editing phase a little bit more easier. But anyway, if you want a more in-depth explanation about timecode, I would highly recommend you to check out this video from Curtis Judd where he walks you through a timecode demo. In terms of my actual workflow, let me start off with the timecode devices themselves. I have a pair of Tentacle Sync E timecode generators that I plug into my camera via the 3.5mm headphone jack. As none of my cameras have a dedicated timecode input, this device will put the audio timecode to the left channel of the video's audio file, and that can be converted into actual timecode metadata in a video editor. And then I have the sound device's MixPre 3 Mark II recorder that I plug my Rode NTG5 microphone into. This audio recorder has a built-in timecode generator and will embed the timecode information onto the audio file's metadata. And the last timecode device I have is the Tentacle Sync Track E audio recorder that I use for lavalier microphones. So how it all works is when I'm setting up for a video shoot, I'll first turn on all the timecode devices that I want to use. And since I have several Tentacle Sync devices, I like to use the Tentacle Sync app on my phone to do a wireless sync amongst all the Tentacle Sync devices. That takes about a second or two to complete, and the Tentacle Sync devices will go from blinking red to green, indicating that all the internal clocks are in proper sync. Once that is done, I'll plug one of the Tentacle Sync devices into my MixPre via the aux/mic-in jack on the right hand side. And one thing to note here is that I have configured my MixPre 3 with a few settings that enable timecode properly. So check out my MixPre setup video to learn more about the settings I have configured to enable timecode on this device. But back to syncing the MixPre's timecode, in the menu, I'll jump into the timecode settings and click on the jam setting where I can see both timecodes listed. The Tentacle Sync's timecode information is on the top and the MixPre's one is below that, and the difference is listed at the very bottom here. And syncing the timecode between the two devices is as easy as clicking the Jam TC button, and voila, the diff is now all zeros, meaning that both devices have the same timecode. And that's basically about it. All that's left now is to plug in the Tentacle Sync E to my cameras, and then I can start filming. And once I'm ready to start the edit, I'll bring the video and audio clips into my video editor of choice, DaVinci Resolve. I'll first start to convert the audio timecode to proper timecode metadata for my video files by clicking the Update Timecode from Audio Track menu option. And then I'm ready to sync all the clips by selecting the Auto Sync based on timecode option, and then everything will be properly synced in a second. All in all, this process of syncing separate audio and video clips together is simplified with timecode. And while it might not look too useful for a talking head shot like this where I'm directly talking in front of the camera, but if I were to have a multi-camera setup where I have a separate camera angles, it would make it so much easier to sync between the clips of these two video files and the audio file together. And that will inevitably make the edit a bit more dynamic because I can switch between multiple angles much more easier. Another minor thing about my workflow is that I sometimes use this special Y splitter cable from Tentacle Sync. It essentially allows me to use an external microphone like my Video Mic NTG alongside the Tentacle Sync E. I use this primarily for important projects where I need the scratch audio to act as a backup audio source, as the microphone built into the Tentacle Sync E isn't the best in terms of quality. Now you might be looking at my setup and workflow here and thinking, that's a little bit overkill for just making YouTube videos. And my answer to that is yes, it is a little overkill. But the reason why I use timecode while I was making all my YouTube videos these days is not because the hand clapping or, slate method of like syncing audio clips is not as effective. I do it because I want to have as much hands-on practice with timecode as I can get. Because if there's one thing I've learned over the past 2 years of exploring video production through making these YouTube videos is that you can't know the ins and outs of using something just by watching a few YouTube videos, as anything can happen whilst filming a video and trying to solve technical problems on set or while I'm filming is not fun, especially given that I'm a one-man band and I have a bunch of other things to think about whenever I'm filming something. Like for example, my documentary about Mostly Fresh, I leveraged timecode a lot for that, as I was frequently starting and stopping the recording because I had impromptu discussions with the owner about his process of making boba. And having timecode for that project greatly simplified the post-production step of joining the audio from the lavalier with the various video files that I shot on the camera during that day. The result is that documentary shoot went pretty smooth, as all the practice I've been doing prior to that video made it a breeze to use timecode when I was on location. But taking a step back to why I decided to invest in a timecode workflow in the first place, it all started when I was planning for my programming documentary last year. I was researching a lot about multi-camera setups that incorporated redundant audio, and using timecode was one of the common options that came up. But what happened in the end was that I didn't end up using timecode for those interviews or for filming that documentary because one, I was somewhat second guessing myself. Do I really need to fork out like $400 for something that I can easily achieve with a slate? And secondly, there was a supply chain shortage last year, so I couldn't physically buy timecode generators even if I wanted to. But when I started post-production for that documentary in particular, I kind of wish that I used timecode for those interviews, as some of the clips were not syncing properly through the slate clap, specifically sort of some of the multi-camera interviews that I filmed. I did manage to align the audio and video clips together eventually, but boy was it a pain in the ass. After that, I had more confidence in my plan to invest in this timecode workflow. So since last September, I started using timecode whilst making all my YouTube videos, and it has been a great experience so far, especially given that I'm quite a scatterbrain when I'm filming these YouTube videos, as I usually have a bunch of other things in my mind when I'm sitting in front of the camera and talking to the camera recording for a YouTube video. But anyway, thanks for watching this video, which is part of my YouTube workflow series where I bring you behind the scenes of how I make videos like this. Let me know down in the comment section below what you want to hear next about my workflow, and I also welcome you to check out the other videos in this series. Okay, I hope to see you very soon in the next video.